to forensics, malware analysis, cyber incident response, and threat intelligence. So in addition to his previous roles, he was a policy advisor on cybersecurity to the Office of the President, and currently he holds a position of a member in various prestigious committees and organizations that discuss cybersecurity. He holds a bachelor's degree with honors in business information technology from Strathmore University. Recently, actually last year, he completed an intensive nine-week course in cybersecurity risk management from Harvard University. And this program provided him with comprehensive knowledge and practical skills in assessing, managing, and mitigating cybersecurity risks in complex environments. Welcome, Martin. So I will introduce Bright. Bright is a system developer in NITAU. He has over 7 years working experience in application software development, DevOps, server management, and he possesses excellent back-end and front-ending programming skills. He has several years experience with programming frameworks such as Django, among the others. Over the years, he has built systems in various sectors such as health, where, for example, that would be the streamlined health software, finance, that is the credit analyst banking system, sports, the national lottery system, and then for national IT certification, which is the ITCO system. So he has vast knowledge when it comes to system development. So you're welcome, Bright.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yes. So this has recently I was scrolling through Reddit, and I came across this meme, and I thought it really resonated with our subject of what we're going to discuss today. So my fellow panelists, I wanted to ask you, do you recall a unique or an amazing incident where it was related to smartphone security, any funny encounter with funny permission requests? So I'll start with Martin. Could you share your story?
Yeah, thanks, Geraldine, and to everybody who is present on this webinar. Geraldine, when you speak about applications asking for strange permissions, I think anyone who owns a smartphone and says they have not experienced this is probably lying. So let's put that on the side. So that's true. I have had a couple of, there's a chess game that I downloaded, and not from a trusted source. And one of the things it wanted access to was my contacts. So I'm asking myself, why does my chess game want access to my contacts? So I've encountered this before, Jerry.
Yeah. Bright, would you like to share any story in regards to, you could have had it from someone?
Yeah, like Martin has mentioned, I think it's a common occurrence. So as long as you have a smartphone, you want to try out a different app here and there. Personally, there's a certain app which I won't mention, but it helps you identify mysterious numbers that are calling you. But so I gave it access, asked me permission. I said yes, because I mean, most of us is what we usually do, because we just want to use the app. We don't mind about the permissions they're asking. So before you know it, I'm getting random pop-ups asking me this. Before you know it, it had taken over my SMS application, and I'm wondering now, what do I do?
Yeah.
You're forced to wish, is it worth keeping this application on my phone? So and before you know it, you just delete it. But however, also, similarly, I know most of us use WhatsApp. And usually in WhatsApp, there are those links that are shared. That click on the link and you get, I don't know, airtime or free data. And I know most of us are falling prey to that.
Yeah.
And then when you click, it takes you somewhere else because you want the 50 GB free data. Install funny things on your phone, and before you know it, like we are going to discuss in this conversation, something will go on your phone and you won't know what's happening. So yeah, I have, certainly.
Okay. Thank you both for sharing your stories. It's always interesting to hear and see, the human side of these tech challenges. So anyway, let's move into a more in-depth discussion. I'll start off with Martin. So Martin, given your role in responding to cybersecurity incidents, what recent trends have you observed regarding the types of threats targeting smartphones? So please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Geraldine. And so I would want to keep this as casual as possible and less academic, because we've had the chance to do some really in-depth research on some of the threats that we have seen, especially with mobile phones. One of the things Geraldine maybe might not have mentioned that I did not put eminently in my bio is that we do a lot of digital forensics. So we deal with a lot of mobile phones that either have been compromised or have been used to compromise or act as bots into a network. And so when we talk about smartphones, one of the things that a lot of people, and again, I said I will speak very casually, is that we treat smartphones like we're a bit reckless about our smartphones. And when I say this, I mean we are sharing, our PIN numbers with different people that access our phone. We are sharing, you get your phone and you hand it to somebody directly, physically. And I try to, from a campaign Geraldine had been running in NITA, I always advocate for people to treat smartphones like they would, a toothbrush, right? It's publicly visible, right? If it's in a bathroom, but it does not need to be shared and given to everybody. It's a very personal tool that you need to keep to yourself. So when we look at threats that have really been eminent on the front for smartphones is what we call malware. So a lot of malware is now targeting the phone instead of computers. If you look back at history and if you look back at research, you will find that a lot of the threats that have been targeting the what you call your network devices were targeting computers largely. Why? Because that was the real thing. But now, then if you look at the proliferation of the smartphone in the world, it has become incredible. So a lot of malware now is targeting. And when I talk about malware, I basically mean malicious files that have been created or designed in a very sophisticated way to gain access to, to some stuff on your phones. Phishing also. Phishing also is a form of malware because they program a software maliciously, but they trick you via an email. So yesterday, funny enough, and I wish I had taken a screenshot of this, I got an invoice from a company saying that I've made a purchase of $481 and they were about to invoice me. And if I did not recognize the purchase, I should click on the link. This was last night, I kid you not. And so for me, that kind of opened my eyes and of course, and I opened this on my phone, on my mobile phone, not even on my laptop. So by virtue of seeing that, I was quickly attuned to, let me first find out the facts. So this is also maybe somebody will talk about it in the webinars we continue, but there is a need for you also to find fact first, because they even had an invoice, proper invoice, my friend. So this is how sophisticated they have become. Of course, there are areas where are very touchy when we look at things like spyware for surveillance. So spyware has been often used, especially in targeting individuals. I don't know if you've heard of the famous Pegasus that was developed by a hacking group called NSO, and it was known for its advanced capabilities for Android and Apple. So it would allow things like monitoring your calls, messages, even activity, or activating things like your camera or your microphone. So for you, you think you're in a meeting with someone and you're discussing sensitive things, but your camera or your microphone has been turned on. So spyware is big business, especially in certain parts of the world, because of the threat that is presented by either individuals or groups to the sovereignty of certain states. There's another one which is very famous called Flexi Spy. So Flexi Spy was designed for various platforms. And what it does, it records phone calls, it will track your GPS location, it intercepts messages. And so you think for you, you're using a very secure messaging platform, which is the truth, they are there and encrypted, but you find that somebody was, able to, on your side of the phone while you are sending the message, they were able to retrieve that. So mobile phones have fallen victim to this kind of technology. We also have what we call the zero-day exploit, which has really, there's very little control over that. Zero-day exploit is just a technical term that means that the vendor of that device or that service is not even aware of the vulnerability that has been exploited on the device. So you'll find that you have an iPhone, but it's a general problem across all iPhones around the world anywhere. And it has been discovered by, somebody who was pressing a few keys here and there. So we call it the zero-day exploit. So Geraldine, in a nutshell, those really are the threats, the eminent threats, the things that we have actually seen with our hands-on experience around the threats to mobile devices.
Thank you, Martin, for shedding light on those trends. Now, Bright, I'll move to you. As a software developer who's committed to privacy by design, how do you strike the balance between providing innovative features, but also respecting the user privacy? Bright, over to you. I think you're muted. Bright, can you confirm that you can hear me? As we wait for Bright to sort out the bit of the technical issue, I'm going to put Martin back on the spot here. You've talked about, oh, Bright, are you back? Oh, you're muted.
Oh, am I back on?
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Right,
Okay.
has the mobile phone been compromised?
Could be.
I'm very safe, sir. So, yeah, so I was just mentioning that there are two things as a developer. One thing, ethical coding. So ethical coding is when you create applications that respect user privacy, they maintain security, and of course, ethical standards. They have different principles: privacy, honesty, fairness. Really, as a human being, from ethical code, we all have, each one of us should have some ethics. So even as a developer, you should have some ethics. And then two, there's something in the software engineering world, which is called privacy by design. So, and privacy by design is an approach to systems engineering or software development that aims at embedding privacy into every stage of software development. Say, for example, if maybe you're developing a dashboard, think at every step, I need maybe a login page. I need maybe if I'm going to, I think Geraldine in the icebreaker mentioned something about asking for a camera when it's a calculator. Like, why are you asking for a camera for a calculator? Like, think of all these different privacy policies and whatnot, and there are different principles that you follow while implementing the privacy by design approach, which includes proactiveness. So as a developer, you want to make sure you're hands-on with whatever you're developing. You don't want to be firefighting all the time. You want to maybe, if you're developing a social media platform, make sure you're hands-on with the policies of the country, what is governing the country, which data are you supposed to collect. Like, be hands-on, be proactive. Don't wait for the law to get you when you're unaware, then you start firefighting. So there are these different principles that you must look into while implementing the privacy by design. But let me just give maybe a few strategies, hands-on strategies on how you can balance the privacy while developing still these new nice features. So one is data minimization. So collect as little data as possible on the user. Like if it's a calculator, you don't need the contacts, you don't need camera. You only need maybe, I don't know, access to the keyboard, and that's all. So my fellow mobile developers will understand. You don't need a lot of things. Minimize the data that you require from the user. And then two, the second strategy would be like ask for consent. Ask for the persons, we as Africans, it is very rude to start using people's things without first asking. Yeah. So as a developer, when I want some information about Geraldine, much as I might maybe want to know what are her interesting dresses for my application, I need to first ask her, is it okay if I collect some of your browsing history? So ask for consent before you start collecting any data on the end users of your application. Then the other thing I can hint about is anonymization and what is called pseudonymization. So you anonymize the data about the person, much as the person might consent. I should try as much as possible to anonymize that. This is anonymize. I'm looking for the easiest word. It might be a bit Arabic to some of us, but in Uganda they call it, like, I think okukweka or something like that, where it's not, even if the data falls in the wrong hands, I've collected data about the addresses Geraldine likes. Even if someone else touches my database, they won't know that it's Geraldine. So there are different techniques you can use to anonymize the data. But then also now the fourth aspect or strategy that I can advise would be transparency. Be as much as transparent as you can. I think most of us have been hearing about the US elections, those things of Donald Trump. Some data was shared and people didn't know that they were being followed up. So be as transparent as you can. And as an employee of Meta and associated with PDP, if you're not transparent, these things will come out. So be as much as transparent as you can. And then also the other thing is try to protect users' data. If, for example, I have some, I think Geraldine mentioned that I've worked on some health systems before. If you're collecting some data about maybe patients, you probably have some data about important people. Make sure you implement security mechanisms wherever you're storing this data. Make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. I mean, like Martin said, we don't want to get so technical in this discussion, but I'm sure my devs, if you try as much as possible to find out the different techniques you can use to implement the security mechanisms, you'll find some. So make sure you're protecting the user's data that you're collecting. And then the other thing that I would like to talk about is privacy by default. What do I mean by privacy by default? Privacy by default, I mean, by default, let the user, you see, when you go to our website, I think most of us these days we've seen that when you go to our website, even before you start using it, they ask you to accept an agreement or whatever. So by default, make sure it's in private mode. What do I mean? Like, instead of the user being given an option to opt out, some users are not very, how do I call it? Like, they're not attentive. They'll use the application, but not fully concentrated. Someone will be watching TV and they just accept. So don't pop up the message accept when it's already ticked and it's already like writing for the user to accept. Of course, they'll accept even without knowing what they're accepting. Yeah? So privacy by default is very, very important. And then obviously, you have to always, as much as possible, do sensitization. Educate your users, educate your application users. If you're If you, for example, I don't know, if it's a lending mobile application, try as much to pass on the information on how they can protect their pins, how they can protect how not to share their OTPs. Like, try as much as possible, keep the users in the know. I like what MTN is doing. MTN is, I think it's called, is it or something like that. They're trying as much as possible to sensitize their users on making sure their private data doesn't fall into the wrong hands. And then the other thing I can talk about is if you're using third-party services. And I know most of us as developers, the developers that are on this platform, I know many of us, APIs came. So everyone wants to use an API of some sorts. You want an API that I don't know, maybe connects to DSTV. You want an API that connects to mobile money. You want an API that's for our non-devs. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, but an API is just basically a system or a software that will allow you connect to another system. Say, for example, if you're paying DSTV, you pay through mobile money. Those are two different systems. There's a system for DSTV, which is for multi-choice. And then there's a system for mobile money, which might be MTN, Airtel, whichever. So an API allows that connection between one system to another. So those are the third parties that most developers will use. I'll develop my system. I want to connect to maybe, I don't know, DSTV, maybe a social media, one of those social media sites. Make sure you scrutinize it. Try to understand what data they're collecting from your application. Otherwise, your users, they'll be there innocently using your application while data is being tracked and transferred to the wrong hands, and which is not good, because you'll be liable to the law. And then in connection to that, I'll mention conduct, you as a developer or you as the company providing the application. Make sure you do regular audits and regular assessments. Try to find out what's happening, what has changed. One thing that I shouldn't, that is on my heart, is that as an IT person, it even doesn't matter whether you're a developer or not. Don't just be there with your system or application and you're not conversant with what has changed. Always carry out regular audits and assessments to find out what has changed, what are they tracking, what is being passed on from my information to whichever. Even as devs, try to assess your server, what data is stored. Has anything changed? Is anything fishy happening? Always try as much as possible to carry out regular audits and assessments. And then finally, I would say always ask for user feedback. It's always I think it's a good courtesy always to ask user feedback. I see even in our different platforms where we work, our different companies, usually at the end of year parties and whatnot, in the retreats, they ask us how any feedback, what can we improve, what can we, so, and yet they pay us. Now, what of us that those who are just providing a service to our users, don't you want to know what they are thinking? Always ask the feedback. Maybe they are not comfortable with some of the things you ask. One of the sites that I use, it's a sports site. I hate using it because every time I can't proceed without ticking a certain area in the agreement of the cookie. So always ask feedback from the users and then see what you can do to improve their privacy concerns. So in a nutshell, Geraldine, I would say all these points I've mentioned, they are not one-offs. Keep doing them regularly and routinely. to make sure you don't fall behind. As a tech person, you should never be there thinking what happened 10 years ago is still the same thing that is applying. Things change. I usually give my people an example. If you have a daughter whom you're protecting, a daughter in our context is our data. So if you have a daughter and the fence is very short and the daughter is growing every day, eventually the daughter might jump. So you have to increase the fence. That's the same analogy even in IT. Always keep improving. I'm sure the smartphones that we have now, very many years ago, we only had flip phones and whatnot. But now things have improved. There's a lot of access. There's a lot of, very many people can code. Even those that haven't gotten the basics, very many hackers have come. So make it a practice all the time to go over these different strategies that I've just mentioned. So in a nutshell, yeah, that's what I would mention. Thank you.
Thank you, Braid, for sharing such fantastic insights in the, the developer world, software developer world, and what people need to do who are working within that, area. I'll now move on to our third panelist who is on the call. His name is David Okweri. I'm just going to introduce him and then ask him to jump right into the conversation. David is a lawyer by profession with a major in human rights and an advocate for peace. He is currently the Chief Executive Director of CMIP Mobile, the only manufacturers of mobile phones, computers, among other telecom accessories on the African continent. He successfully spearheaded development of an internationally awarded G507 smartphone with an inbuilt temperature gun to enable early detection of COVID cases. He has spearheaded penetration and adoption of smartphones in the region from a margin of 17% to 47% in scale out. David, I hope you're there. Please confirm that you can hear me and just say hello.
Oh, hello, Anita.
Oh, no, this is Geraldine.
Geraldine, oh, thank you very much. I'm grateful. I can hear you very well and all the panelists.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump into the question, please. So, David, in your role, how has your company contributed to enhancing user privacy in the design and manufacturing process? Are there any specific privacy-centric considerations enabled in the assembly of mobile devices? You can take the floor.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to make my presentation. I'm sorry that I joined a bit late. I had another engagement which I was handling, but at least I've managed to catch up together with all of you. First and foremost, as already introduced, my name's David Bicham Okwere, and all those introductions which I've given are actually very right. I'm the CEO of SIM Mobile. It's actually a company which started here in Uganda in 2019, and was commissioned by His Excellency, the President of Uganda. That was around November 22nd, 2019, as the first mobile phone manufacturing and assembling and computers here in Uganda. The factory is located at Namamve, and we are actually producing, assembling both mobile phones. When you talk of mobile phones, they are smartphones. They are also what they call feature phones, which they call button phones. But my task, of course, is to look into the assignment, what our company is actually doing in terms of data protection, privacy. As we may all be aware that all companies that deal with manufacturing of mobile phones if one may list and say we have the Samsung companies, we have the iPhones, we have the Technos, we have the Oppo, and so many others. All those companies, we have what they call before you are accredited to begin manufacturing phones or data-related components, you are supposed to have gotten what they call ISO certification. The ISO certification, of course, are standards. There are standards which are given in terms of data protection, so that any information which is given by a service provider, it does not leak out to any other person. That, of course, certification moves hand in hand together with the regulator. If I'm to bring in, like here in Uganda, we have a UCC, which is responsible with giving what they call the typo approval. Type approval is a certificate which is given to each and every company dealing with mobile phone manufacturing or data communication related communication gadgets. UCC does the testing to see that does your component or does your product meet within the required standards, so that any information in terms of the privacy and other communications within the same range. The other factor, of course, which I actually want happily to say that our company, all our products which we manufacture, all our smartphones, we have the type approval, which has been approved by UCC. The other factor, of course, which I wanted to bring in is the partnership which we are having together with NITAU. Of course, your role in terms of providing on issues in regard to internet services to see that the compatibility of internet services of any gadget is within the standards. And I also want to happily to say that we are actually in good partnership together with you, NITAU as well, and you have always supported us. But in line with that, I want to say that there is no one in the world who can make any gadget without getting the international standards which are given by the ISO. If you make your gadget and it is outside that, then you are not worth to trade with. Because the moment I begin trading, my issue is that if I'm within the set standards, it of course provides all the basic things which is supposed to be used. And those basic things are the ones which bring the satisfaction of the client. Well, I know one time in relation to this, UCC had actually mentioned it that they had wanted to switch off components of phones which had not gotten the type of approval. And actually it created quite some bit of alarm from the country. And they had actually said that if UCC had gone ahead to switch off these other data communication gadgets, almost half of the country would be switched off. My issue, of course, in line with that, would mean that then if that is the case, does it mean that most of the gadgets which we are using in our country, it definitely means that some of the companies have not gotten this satisfaction or certification given by UCC. And that, of course, brings in some of the key components which I actually wanted to highlight as far as my discussions are concerned. My discussions, of course, will target specifically like around 4 things. The first one is the specific measures taken during the manufacturing process to address the data use. The other one will be the challenges faced and lessons learned in terms of implementing the privacy and centric practices. The third point, of course, is about emphasizing the need for the end user empowerment in terms of controlling their privacy settings while providing transparent information to users about data collection, of course, and this was part of the area where the former presenter had actually been discussing about. The last one will be about balancing user convenience with the need of enhanced privacy. And as I had already mentioned, of course, I introduced about what our company is. Let me begin with the point number one, as far as the importance of timely software is concerned. At CIMI, of course, as a company, of course, we recognize the role of timely software updates, where we see that if I have manufactured a product, how compatible is my gadget with software updates? And that, of course, brings in the timely factor of enhancing the security of the mobile device. And that brings in the regular factor of introducing the new features. And of course, all of us, as I'd already said before, that when you normally buy your gadget or you buy your phone, is my phone capable of allowing updates? But of course, the other presenter had actually mentioned in regard to this that most of the people who were attending these other meetings, they are developers. You're actually keen to know is my gadget or is the manufacturer allowing updates for these apps, which we have, of course, done that. Most of our gadgets which we produce, they allow the regular updates in line with the required standards which are provided, one, of course, by the regulator, and then the second one, there are also those ones which are given by the service provider. And this, of course, brings in other key components, which sometimes, of course, bring in a threat in terms of the vulnerability of protecting the users from involving issues of the cyber threats. Because if you don't update your your data protection service, it actually exposes all those things which can bring in issues of allowing people to see that they can penetrate into your gadget. The other factor I'd also wanted to bring in is on the issue of encouraging users. But of course, as we are all aware that proactive strategies in terms of encouraging users to update their devices promptly is one other thing which is quite good, and it provides clear and user-friendly notifications, which brings in educating users in terms of benefits of the updates, and also bringing in other factor generating into the seamless updates as far as minimizing the interruptions. This, of course, brings in the other issue, which brings the guard factor. How does one protect his own data, which has been stored to the gadget which has been made? And all these things we have featured in when we are making our phones, our tablets, and also maybe our laptops, and all those features have been bringing. The other point which I'd also wanted not to leave behind is to see that we have actually brought in issues of widespread adoption in terms of the security updates and the vulnerability user behavior device. And this fragmentation brings in the external factor, such as network constraint, which can hinder the timely updates. But this, of course, goes in line with what I'd mentioned with my second point and the first point, which I'd actually brought in before. But let me also try to sum up on some of these other issues which I'd wanted the members here to understand. while we are focusing into this other manufacturing, there is some of the key components which we are trying to bring to the attention of all users, which our components do. Our components or our smartphones which we manufacture, they actually allow the provisions of allowing users on the following things. They actually allow users to have a strong emphasis in terms of educating them about the apps, because the app, which if anyone or any service provider has provided, it will actually be allowing someone who's using that, please go into the Google apps in terms of seeing that you comply with A, B, C, D provisions. And this, of course, brings in the clear explanation during the app installation, which has already been addressed by the other presenter. And that does not leave behind the user guide, because I don't know, with most of the people, when they are buying the gadgets or the phones, whether people try to go through the user guides, which are always being provided for. It's always very important. Let me repeat that. It's always very important when you buy your phone or when you buy your laptop or you buy any other gadget, that paper which has been given as a user guide, try to read through, understand it to the best of your knowledge before you can even begin using your phone. So we provide the user guide to guide all our users that please use the following things on A, B, C, D. And these are some of the provided specifications. The other one is the factor which is actually in terms of reviewing permissions, as the other presenter had said. These are things which are all accommodated in the gadget or the mobile phones which we manufacture. We encourage always users to adopt the best practices. But of this, of course, requires the earlier things of reviewing and managing the apps, the permissions, as had already been mentioned before. And this includes regular audits. These had also been mentioned before, and utilizing the inbuilt permissions and terms of manufacturing features, and providing resources and all that. Finally, as I actually try to bring it to the members, there are issues we wanted to look into as far as abuse of permissions, where sometimes people allow hackers to get into. If you don't follow some of the things which have been provided by a manufacturer, then you allow people, or even you, the one who's a developer, you allow any other person to hack into your gadget. That's why we actually nowadays you find that there are quite a number of other people who begin exposing their data information to outsiders outside the required rules which has been provided by the manufacturer, and the person is in process to access your banking software. Certification. So we actually have the certificates which allow us to insert those other things. If there is any company which actually makes a gadget they have not provided some of those other things which are the ISO certification, people who have begun using most of their products without type approval by the NITA Uganda, then like how people have disclaimers that the person own actually expose your own self, all the information about you, because you have gotten a product or you have gotten a gadget which has not passed through the protection authority. the country, but which we are happy to note that all that which the government of did. I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you, David, for sharing those incredible perspectives. Now, we still have some more 10 minutes, so I'm going to just dive into the Q&A session. Martin, I'll start off with you. What measures are being implemented to protect against malware and phishing attacks targeting mobile phones?
Yeah, so thanks, Geraldine. So let me start with a quote that I like to use a lot. The human being is the problem here. The technology is smart, the technology is great, but the human being is the problem. So for starters, before we start talking about mitigation on anything, I think the people need to be, first of all, made aware of, what are the signs of a phishing email? What are the signs of a malware file? Because the technology can only be as good as the user, right? For those who are subscribers to things of the faith, you will hear someone say that the creator, the tool can never outsmart the creator. And so one of the things users have to do to act as a form of mitigation or as a strategy to manage how best to protect their smartphones from cyber attacks is make yourself aware. Know what does a phishing email look like? What does a text message, somebody on the call, Bright mentioned that you find a message going around saying Shell is giving free fuel. I don't know, there's no free lunch. Let's face that. And so there are a lot of these little things that will show you and are quick to show you that this is probably something that is fishy. And first, there's always a need for urgency. So the message is always, hurry up, there's a problem, this account is going to be closed, or we are going to stop this service. Like our Bafere who used to call asking about, telling you, we are from UCC and we are going to shut down your SIM card in the next half hour. So the emails or the messages that come to our smartphones that contain some of these malicious bundles will always carry that sense of urgency that you need to rush, you need to move quickly. Secondly is you will always find that the name of the sender, if it's an email, if they send you an email, the name of the sender does not match anything to do with the message. So for example, Netflix will never send you a communication without using its official domain. But if Martin Karunji is sending you a message saying you, I'm from Netflix and we are going to shut down your account because maybe we have noticed you are doing ABCD, and you're quick to panic and start clicking links to make sure your account is renewed, then you're in trouble. So you also need to really look out for who is the sender, right? You're there on your telephone and then you see a pop-up message coming in your SMS that your mobile money account has been deducted. But the sender is a 0776135142. Yeah, that is, MTN does not use that kind of format to reach out to you or the telecommunication provider. So there is a need for us as human beings, first of all, to create that level of awareness and that level. I like to call it paranoia, right? But it's a healthy kind of paranoia. Not everything that comes requires your instant, immediate attention. But on the technical front, there have been many interventions that have been put in place to secure a lot of the technology that we are using. There's a very basic one, which Mr. Akwera talked about, which is updating. You people take updates for granted. I've seen people who update only when they find a Wi-Fi hotspot. So what happens if you don't find one for the next 6 months? So don't be miserly, because this is a very key protection mechanism. A lot of us have banking applications on our smartphones, or investment group applications, or all sorts of applications that contain monetary value. What you call it, people want to cryptocurrencies. Usually these updates usually have a security component. At least 60% of the times companies put out an update on those applications that we as users are using, they have a security component to them. And most of the times, I'll give it to you from my side, is that when a hacker has an interest on a target, the first thing we want to know is how out of date are their systems. The older your systems are, or the more or the less updated they are, the better for us, because now that is an entry point. Because somebody has taken effort to fix a vulnerability in that software, but because for you, you're waiting for Wi-Fi, us now we jump in. Of course, that's only if you're a target. So that is so updating your software is a very, very key component, is a key step to protecting yourself as an individual. Secondly, would also be to take a bit of caution where you download your software from. We have this excitement that comes with free software. Yeah, free things are nice until they are not. Yeah, I mentioned there's not really free lunch. So that's why our smartphone has a thing called accept unknown sources. The programmer here, Bright, will tell you that if you download anything onto your phone from an unknown source, it clearly means you have a level of trust for it. That's why they always encouraged to download from the Apple, the store, the Google Play Store, or I forget the one for Apple. So these are trusted because they have been vetted, tested, and proven that they will not cause any form of malicious function to your devices. So be very careful. Applies to your computer as well, away from the smartphone. Because what happens is the whole point about hacking is to get something. So there's something of value that is there that we want. So to take note that you need to make sure that you download from the right sources. And right sources means you have to verify and double check, because there are some sources that are not necessarily on the stores, on the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, but are available on the open market. Thirdly, antiviruses. A lot of people consider smartphones not to require an antivirus, but we are in the age where the smartphone is probably more with you than your computer is or your tablet. You put it next to your bed. There are some people who use it even to track how long they have slept, if they snored, if they turned in the bed, if you know, all these things. So that thing is literally with you all the time. So it is upon you to take some very critical steps in protecting it. And an antivirus is not a bad idea, especially for operators of Android operating systems. Fourthly, to be careful on the networks on which you connect to when you are up and about. I can tell you 95%, actually, let me push that number higher. 98% of the people on this call, including us, the panelists, have gone onto a free network before, whether in an airport, in a train station, in a cafe. Bright is laughing. So we take it for granted, but it's a real thing, right? As I've said, because the smartphone is continuously on you, it's the best entry point for anybody who has an interest or a target. Open Wi-Fi's are very, very risky, especially if you do not know where they are coming from, right? That's why you will find that if you go to international airports, there will be a big advertisement saying the official Wi-Fi, official free Wi-Fi. During the NAM summit, I'm very pleased to announce that we had very, very elaborate signs showing our visitors the Wi-Fi that NITA Uganda had provided, which of course is controlled and secured, so that they are not connecting to any free Wi-Fi. Because you and I, by the way, for your information, can create a free Wi-Fi, and all it's doing is just harvesting information from every device that connects to it. So to be very, very cautious of which connection do you jump onto, right? So I think those are really the 4 things that we can look at as mechanisms. Some are largely on our end as users, but also on the side of the manufacturers of these devices. Mr. Okwera was very clear. He mentioned that there are standards. So those industry standards must be adhered to. Currently now we are in a fight to see how best to manage the proliferation of fake or counterfeit devices that are on the local market. There are initiatives being done by various agencies locally. Those who have already made those purchases, there is a consideration that they will not be turned down, but going forward, any other device that comes onto any of the networks will be managed. So there is also a governance point that covers into as a mechanism for protecting users against cyber threats onto their mobile phones, and in turn, of course, protecting your data. Maybe something I should not forget also is VPN connections are not a bad thing, especially if it's a paid service. VPN is a very good way of managing to encrypt point-to-point information. I think I mentioned this earlier when I was speaking, but if you go onto a free Wi-Fi that you're not so sure about, or you have had stories about, for example, if you're flying through an airport and you might be a person of interest, having a VPN is not a bad idea to help cover up anything that might be left in the open. For those who don't know what a VPN does, it's basically a piece of technology that covers up it's like a cloth so that you don't walk naked on the street in the short term. Thanks, Geraldine.
Thank you, Martin. I'll move on to Bright. Maybe you can touch on both of these questions. The first one is, how do you balance the user experience while anonymizing all the information? And the other question is touching on data collection. How secure is it to use a free online application for data collection? I think this person has experience, they know of an organization that has used Kobo app to collect data. So if you can touch on those two questions, right?
Yeah, thanks, Geraldine. So beginning with the first one about user experience. For starters, provide user-friendly interfaces. You don't want to make it they say good interface, it should be very intuitive. It should be very even a 12-year-old should know that these maybe there are standard things that we know, that green means submit, red means it's danger. Make the interfaces very user-friendly so that they are very intuitive and very elaborative to the user, without a lot of explanation. And then the second thing that I can mention, as you're running out of time, is that you can use different anonymization techniques in complement with your user experience. For example, you can use tokens. I'm sure guys that do React, guys that do Django, Laravel, all these other different languages, there are different methods you can use to create tokens. So our tokens, in simple language, a token is like a key that gives you access to access a room. So in our case, access some data. So a token, use tokens to complement your user experience. But also the other thing that maybe I can quickly mention is collect only essential data. Don't be there still again, going back to our first example that we got at the beginning. You're working on an app that does simple calculations, you're asking for a camera. Camera for what? You're asking GPS for what? Collect only necessary, relevant information for your application. So yeah, that's it about the user experience. Then the other question was about
it was about how secure to use free online applications for data collection.
Oh, okay. So I think for starters, Martin has also hinted on it. Find out the vendor that you're trying to use, as your third-party online thing. For example, if I'm going to use maybe Kobo, indeed, our user maybe has if I'm going to use Kobo, I'll find out where does Kobo, which country is it in? Is it a reputable thing? I know for starters, for example, like Kobo is a Harvard project, so it's a bit reputable. It's not like some kafani third-party application. So do your research and find out the third party that you're going to use for your online application. And then the other thing is, of course, you need to do some encryption. If you're going to use any third party, a bit by the way, this is not even for complex things like Kobo, even on iCloud, for example, or Dropbox, you can still encrypt the data. You don't have to leave it blank. You don't have it to leave it plain. Still encrypt data. Do some security mechanism with it. You can really do better. Try to find out different techniques that you can use. So that's it. Use some encryption. Encryption is basically, I'm trying to find a simple English word for encryption. Encryption is how? Is it like hiding something like that? Hide that data. Don't leave it there in the open. Eh? If you're leaving your place, eh, you don't leave that door wide open. Probably you close the gate and whatnot. So hide that data, hide the information that you're working with. And then maybe finally, the other thing that I can mention is authentication. There are different authentications that you can use. Make sure you have some sort of middleware. Make sure you do some authentication. Authentication is making sure that if, for example, I'm accessing this data, not everyone can access that data. I need to know that indeed the person trying to access that data is the right person supposed to access it. Even when you're using a third party, there's some authentication that you can do. And fortunately, like most of the speakers have mentioned or hinted on, most of these third-party applications, they are routinely applying fixes or what they call patches to make sure that their security is up to date. There are things now called two-factor authentication, where much as you log in, I'm sure most of us on this call have done it before, where if, for example, I'm trying to log in on my email, they'll send a token to my phone. So that is two-factor authentication. I have my password, I know my password, but even much as, because my password can be stolen, my neighbor can see my password. So I have some other thing that I can use to complement my password. So the emails will send me maybe a token, and then I can use the password and the token. So that's two-factor authentication. You're using two things to be authenticated into your application. So in brief, that's what I can mention for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bright. Given that we have gone a few minutes past the end of this webinar, I just want to request the panelists at least share some parting shots, maybe something came up during the webinar that you'd like to share with the audience. Let's give each one 1 minute. I'll start off with David.
Thank you very much for inviting us for this great initiative webinar. I think it's the first of its kind. I've never seen it before, and I wish it should actually continue as a routine thing, because I can confess 100% or even 150 plus percent that where we are heading in the new generation, we are heading into what they call the digital world. And heading to the digital world means that we are heading into the computer use of information, meaning internet, the apps, and all that. I would actually encourage that the authorities work hand in hand to encourage that the population or the public is sensitized regularly. It could even be like either every monthly, so that people come to know. Because people are buying smartphones, people are buying tablets, people are buying computers. Others are just there on issues of using just maybe WhatsApp and Facebook and all that. They don't know they are exposing all other informations of theirs to the whole world, and they are prone to be hacked. So regular sensitization, like this kind of engagement, is very important. It will help us to save our country. But otherwise, as earlier mentioned by one of the panelists, me, I would even say 99.9%, including myself, all people at great risk to see that we fall into trouble in future as we head into this global world. So I really advocate that this be promoted. It's a plus on my side, and I want to thank the initiators of this. Thank you very much.
Right, parting shots.
Yeah, I think this has been very nice. It's creating good awareness, especially I know as developers, sometimes we get overwhelmed and we don't mind about the privacy. But maybe why? The question is why privacy? I mean, I can do my thing and just as long as it's working, it's okay. Because privacy is more of an underlying thing. It's like walking out with no vest or no underwear. Like you look good, but no, something will be wrong. So it's the same thing. Like why privacy? One, privacy will allow your users to build trust on your applications. If you're working on a learning applications, if you don't have privacy, users won't trust your application and they won't go on your application. Two, it reduces the technical debt. Technical debt in simple terms, is work that you store for later. If you don't work on the thing now and handle it now, eventually it will come back to bite you, and then you'll start firefighting. And then finally, it minimizes risk. And each one of us doesn't want risk. Not only in data, like everything in our lives, we don't want risk, we don't want loss. So privacy helps minimize risk, which eventually fights loss, and you can save a lot of things if you minimize the risk. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Martin, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Geraldine. So I think mine is very simple. Treat everything on your smartphone like you would treat your toothbrush or your underwear. You don't share it, you don't show it around. It's very simple. I've never seen anyone walk around with their toothbrush on their head in the middle of the road, even when they are mad. So avoid sharing things that don't need to be shared. Some of us make ourselves targets for hackers by the virtue of the things that we do. I knew a friend of mine one day, she was flying for a honeymoon and took a picture of her boarding pass with all the boarding information. And I quickly went to the airline she was using, put it in, and I got information that I did not know about her. So you can imagine the passport details, I got the seat numbers, I could change the seat, I could cancel the flight, cancel the ticket. I could do a lot of crazy things. So, and that's a part of data privacy that you need to be also very, very cautious about, the things that you put out there for the public to see. Yeah, so basically remember the toothbrush underwear concept, and I think we shall have our data protected well. Thanks.
Thank you all for your engaging questions and insightful responses. For the questions that haven't been responded to in this webinar, a representative from the office will be reaching out with the responses via email. And I just want to say a big thank you to our wonderful panelists, Martin, Bright, and David, for sharing your expertise and experiences. And I hope everyone has found this today's webinar valuable. I just wanted to leave something small, but remember that in this digital age, your privacy matters. It matters a lot. So staying informed is key. So until next time, stay secure and have a great day. Over to you, Anita.
Oh, thank you so much, Geraldine. It's been such a very, very insightful webinar. You can see the comments in the chat. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, especially Geraldine, for the excellent moderation, and of course for the icebreaker that tickled our minds today. And of course, thank you so much, our dear panelists, for that day, for sharing those insights, and of course for making the time to come and speak to our community. And of course to the participants, thank you for always making the time to attend these webinars whenever we call you upon. And we hope that today you've gained knowledge, which we believe you are going to be able to share with your friends, your family, and your colleagues. And maybe to let you know that our data privacy campaign is still ongoing. We are coming to our very last days. Please follow us if you haven't followed us on our different social media platforms at PDPO Uganda on every platform. And you'll be able to keep abreast with the different activities that are still ongoing. I shared a link in the chat earlier. Please click on that link and give us feedback. We use that feedback to make future webinars better for you. Another thing, today we have a tweet space in the evening at 7 p.m. and we are going to be discussing taking charge of our privacy. So please be there. It will be hosted on our Twitter page at PDPOUG. And also, I would like to extend an invitation to all of you to attend our data privacy conference. Our campaign ends on the 31st, and we shall have a data privacy conference. I shared the link earlier in the chat. I hope you're able to see it. Please register and be able to join us virtually. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Anissa, I think I think some people are requesting for you to resend the link.
Okay, let me just share it.